Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about What If Season 3, Episode 6. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I love that beginning with it's afterwards with the Watcher where he's like, this is in the grand scheme of the multiverse, there's like obviously so much going on, alternate timelines, alternate universe. He's like, etc., etc. You know the rigmarole now, but he's like, there's some places on the outskirts of the multiverse which are less what if and more what the hell. I was like, I like that. Where it's like, Ultron was built to sing show tunes. There was even one that looked like it was a pirate one, and I was like, there's someone that had like a white skull face. I was like, is that supposed to be, and it looked like it was a woman. I was like, is that supposed to be Death as a pirate or something? I was like, that's cool, that's neat. Nevertheless, this episode is a Western, and obviously it follows Shang-Chi. I thought it was interesting when it's like, okay, they're ringing the bell, and it's like, you got to ring it 10 times. And I was like, my brain with me, it was like, 10 rings. Like Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. And then lo and behold, Shang-Chi shows up. I was like, that's the point. I just thought, that's immediately where your mind's supposed to go to when you put the phrase 10 rings out there, but it just didn't even correlate. That's what that was. So he's kind of a fighter in the Old West in this universe. And yeah, just obviously throw his hat in the air before it even comes down. He's kicking butt, taking everyone down, and obviously he's got Kate Bishop by his side. I just love that. That's because I thought it was interesting too, considering like he doesn't actually have the 10 rings in this universe. That's just his nickname. To be fair, like the 10 rings was just, I'm sure Wenwu brought about because of the actual 10 rings themselves. But yeah, it doesn't have that connotation in this world, and Kate is just Hawkeye, which it's kind of interesting to think about. Like, I guess in this universe, she's just the only Hawkeye. But nevertheless, they're in here fighting the Hood, which I thought was interesting because I was like, the Hood. I was like, well, who knows where the production of this was, like how long ago this season was written, because obviously Ironheart's been in a can for a minute, plus I think it's been retooled and stuff, and obviously it's not coming out until next year, mid to late next year, ain't it? Like maybe like June or July or something like that. I can't remember the date, but either way. So I'm wondering that's why they felt comfortable just throwing out the Hood, because they were like, well, we would have already had the Hood by now when this was initially being written or put in production. Who knows? But I just thought that was interesting. I was like, it's funny thing that we're getting the Hood first in animation, and this, debut of the Hood MCU-wise is in a animated multiverse story. There's another character, which I think is going to be next episode, which is one of the episodes I knew about ahead of time, but we'll talk about that then. But yeah, I was like, that's going to be interesting, because like I know next to nothing about the Hood. Only know like he's going to be in Ironheart and he's played by Anthony Ramos, but like it's a character I don't know. I know he's on the more mystical side, so I know he's connected to Mephisto, so I wasn't sure if Mephisto was going to make an appearance in this series or not, but regardless, the story revolves around like the reason why Shang-Chi is here, because their sister got as far away from their dad as possible, which I was like, that's kind of interesting. And she came to America trying to find that American dream, but as we know, like this being the 1800s, how Asian folk in general, but specifically Chinese people who came here trying to find a new life, how they were treated here. And especially because like the Hood is able to do whatever he wants to here, because like no one's going to lift a finger for like Chinese people being attacked or taken advantage of. Like, they're at the, like any minority in this time, you're going to be at the bottom of the totem pole. Very, very bottom. You won't even be on the totem pole type of situation. So Shang-Chi came here to track down his sister, and he joined forces with Kate, who's out for revenge for her family that was murdered. So guess it means like her mom doesn't, become the villain she became in this, like she did in Hawkeye. I think it's interesting too, because like jumping ahead a little bit, the gun later on is like, this is your mom's gun, which I'm like, I wonder, like, it just makes you wonder, is like that why she's a sharpshooter she is in this universe? Because does it come from her mom, considering the gun at the end was her mom? So I don't know. I also appreciate the person they beat up at the beginning was John Walker. It's like, yeah, you can't catch a break in any universe, can you, buddy? Looks like you're kind of, I mean, obviously in the aftermath of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, based on what we saw of you in Thunderbolts, the trailer, or at least the teaser, that's the only thing I've saw, but was like, yeah, based on that, you're kind of down and out in the aftermath of all that. So it's like, yeah, it doesn't look like things are on the up and up for you in this continuity either. But along the way, they end up running into, boy, was it Jun Fun? He's like the survivor of a place that was attacked. It's like the Hood came here on a ghost train and snatched everyone up. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I was like, ghost train. I was like, are we real? I mean, once again, I know that the Hood is supernatural related. So I was like, are we going down the supernatural route? But I thought it was an interesting revelation where it's like the train itself isn't actually supernatural. It's not magic, it's tech. Which I was like, first I was like, whoa, is this gonna be like alien tech that crash landed on Earth? It's like, no, apparently it's Stark Tech, which, you know, Stark Tech's around, Justin Hammer's, you know, company is around in this continuity because they're producing weapons, but I guess Stark Tech is like at the forefront of like tech and stuff. So it's like I don't know if anti-gravity would be the right word, but levitate, like it's stuff on it to make the train levitate. It goes across a large gap. So it's like they're aware of technology, but they're not aware of like the extent it can in this universe. So, I mean, that might be just a broader thing in this universe. So what does that mean having like tech? But I mean, you see like guns or just regular guns being manufactured, but you have tech like Star Tech. So is that interesting juxtaposition of like, yeah, there's like basic like tools and weapons of this age, but there's also like high-tech stuff too that hasn't fully translated over to the weapons because like I don't think there was any weapons we saw that were like high-tech. Only like the instruments used to like make the train flow were only like high-tech. Everything else was just guns. So maybe Stark Industries works a little differently in this universe. It doesn't like make weapons like they would in a lot of other. I was also surprised when that guy showed up. At first, I was like, "Who is that?" And I heard the voice. I was like, "Is that supposed to be Sonny from Ant-Man and the Wasp?" Yeah, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Because I was about to say, because I was like, that sounds like Walton Goggins, and I heard the voice somewhere. I'm like, that's definitely Walton Goggins, so it has to be Sonny, and it is. I actually don't remember what it is. There was something fairly recently I was watching that was talking about the MCU. Because, like, that's the only reason why I remember Sonny's name at all, even before they said it. Like, that's the only reason why I remembered it is because of something I was watching that was MCU related, like, discussing the MCU recently. Because I've only seen Ant-Man and the Wasp twice, and the second time I saw it was, like, because I rewatched it a few years ago, so it's been a while, so I would have never naturally remembered his name. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I mean, makes sense. He's a criminal in the weapon trade, so it makes a lot of sense he would be here. But yeah, he sends his goons after trying to kill a kid. I was like, ugh, Jesus. I mean, that's Walton Goggins constantly getting typecast as kind of the bad guy. Not always the bad guy, but he ends up playing those villainous roles. But yeah, those guys are legitimately trying to kill that kid until the Watcher just interfered. He like made sure they fell off the train. He's like, yeah, sometimes like, you know, the heroes of a story, like things could end tragically, but it's like, yeah, sometimes you just need a little help. So... But it's also setting the stage for, I guess, what Jun Fon's future might be in this universe. But we'll get to that later. But Shang-Chi eventually dukes it out with the Hood. And like I said, I thought it was interesting. I was like, who's it going to be? Especially because his voice was like modulated or changed and like very demonic. And I was like, oh, I wonder is that how that's going to work with Anthony Ramos's portrayal of the character? Because we saw the scars and everything. I was like, what's up with that? I was wondering... Like, it feels like there's also going to be a reveal to that, but maybe not. That once again, I don't know the Hood's power, so I was like, I know it's magic, but what's your whole thing? I assumed it was teleportation. I don't know where I got that from. Hey, I feel like I've never heard anyone talk about the Hood's actual power, so I didn't know what to expect. It seems like it's mainly like invisibility, because it seemed like it wasn't teleportation, because the Hood later on is just walking and their footsteps are in the snow. So I also thought it was interesting too, because I was like, the Hood knows martial arts. It's like you're keeping up with Shang-Chi pretty well. I was like, oh, I was just like, oh, like, I was like, that's interesting. I was like, does the Hood just naturally know martial arts or something? But then we get the reveal of course, is Shang-Chi fighting his sister. And it's like, of course, they're going to be on sadly opposite sides of things. The Hood tried to come after her, but she ended up getting the Hood instead and killed him. And she's the one taking control of this whole thing. Like, the Hood probably had his own thing that he was going to do. I wouldn't put it past it. Like, the Hood probably would have just been like, maybe I'm going to use this Chinese labor and kill them, but now all these people are in a trance because it's kind of like I'm going to do a little evil for the greater good. Because for her, it's like this country isn't what we thought it could be, and we should make it into what it needs to be. So she's making an army of all the laborers, and it's like, right, I'm doing this for all of us. But for Chong-Chi, it's like, no, but you're stripping away these people's like free will. It's like it's like I get where you're coming from, but this isn't a right way to handle this. It ain't the right way to do it. But for her, it's like, if you're not going to be on my side, brother, then get out of my way. And if I have to, I'll kill you. So brother fighting sister despite everything. You know what immediately came to my mind too is this makes me think of Warrior. If you've never seen the show Warrior, great show, sadly canceled twice. It's such a damn good show, but that show's at the heart of it was a brother versus a sister for the most part. Martial arts story, basically in the same setting. I wonder if any shape or form did that hold any inspiration for this. I mean, there are Western-esque elements to the show Warrior, but especially some episodes were very heavily Western modified, because that takes place. I'm assuming this takes place in the same place too, like San Francisco. But either way, like it definitely feels Warrior coded, and I wonder was that show a massive inspiration for this or not, or just because that was like pulled from like Bruce Lee stories, or like short stories he had written or something like that, or just writings in general. That is what the show Warrior is on. So this could just be pulling a little bit from that same feeling vibe, whatever the case may be. I was kind of thinking Warrior the entire time I was watching this episode, but especially with the brother and sister fighting situation. And at the same time, sadly, Kate's on the train getting hypnotized. I thought it was interesting because Sunny's like, oh yeah, like we got this thing from Russia. I was like, oh, is it supposed to be kind of like the same thing used to hypnotize like and control like the Winter Soldier? Like it seems like it's supposed to be something similar to that, maybe a hypnosis of that ilk. And Sunny ends up revealing it wasn't the Hood that killed her parents. It was him himself, because he's like, oh, it wasn't even for business. It was just for pleasure, because I had so much fun. I was like, Jesus. I was like, I know you're a bad guy, but I don't remember you being a complete another sociopath in Ant-Man and the Wasp. Once again, to be fair, it's been a while since I rewatched it, so he could have been just as much of a sociopath in that too. But it's only because June Fawn ended up ringing the bell. So him being spared, the Watcher helping multiple things, like it's like if he wasn't around, he wouldn't have been able to ring the bell to kind of, break everyone out of their hypnosis, including Kate, who dual wield pistoled, literally murked everyone, but kept Sunny alive because she wants him to suffer. And Shang-Chi ended up getting up and was ready to fight his sister, but stops himself because it's like, right, we don't have to do this. It's like, I know you're my sister. You've always been stronger than me. I've always looked up to you. You've always been my hero, and I won't fight you. He's like, and I know you won't hurt me either. And she was torn because it's just like, right, she's so consumed, the power of the Hood is controlling her, but it's feeding off on like that anger and hatred and her own desires, and it's twisting and contorting them to do some terrible things just for, to see her vision, her beliefs of like how she can make this country better and, change things for the better, no matter how you might have to go about things, and might not be approaching things obviously in the best way. But when it's all said and done, though, she was ready to, it seems like, to strike Shang-Chi down, and Kate ended up shooting her. I was like, no. I was like, well, Kate's going to show up at the last second, shoot the blade out of her head. Nope. Kate murked her because she didn't realize who that was. She was dead set on killing the Hood. It's like Sunny's the one that killed her parents, but most likely the Hood's the one that gave the order or whatever. Maybe. Might not have done it, but might have given the okay. So Kate probably felt vindicated in doing that regardless. Plus, she's saving her partner's life, having no idea it was his sister. I was like, damn. I was like, are we going? I'm sure if this was longer or this was expanded upon, you'd probably have to deal with the fact that there probably would be any other story. This probably would be a fallout or whatever. But for Shang-Chi, it's just like, no, my sister was already gone. She was a victim of the Hood. That Hood dealt with my sister a long time ago. But for that last moment before dying, she was able to be herself again. And then we see at the end there, the hood floats off. So it's like, right, we haven't seen the last of the hood. Once again, like, it connected to Mephisto means that someone else could always get chosen. I mean, whether he's directly involved in any of this or not, it doesn't change anything. But that hood's just out there, meaning there's more evil. That, I mean, that's the whole point too. Like, there's more evil out there to be dealt with. So this situation has been stopped. But I thought it was kind of sweet, the little ending where, like, June Fawn is telling a story, and I love Kate being like, "Oh, he's kind of that kid's got an iron fist on him," and I was like, "Wait, what?" And I looked it up because I always forget the other character's name. I mean, I know there's multiple people who've had the mantle, but, like, obviously Danny Rand is, like, probably the most well-known one because he's the one that we were kind of introduced to. Like, I think he's the first Iron Fist in the comics, like, you know, not like in the continuity, but, you know, first iteration of that character that you kind of got introduced to. But I looked the other one. His name is Lin Lai, I believe, is like the other person who's taken up the mantle. He's a Chinese character who's taken up the mantle, and I was like, oh, so I was wondering, and because even the Watcher kind of said, like, oh yeah, like, because basically the Ten Rings and Hawkeye are going to inspire other heroes. So I was like, oh, so he's going to be kind of like the Iron Fist in this world. Probably won't have the Iron Fist power, but he will, because, like, he's doing martial arts and stuff. I mean, before I even knew Shang-Chi existed, my like, when I thought of martial artists in this universe, in the Marvel universe, the only one I knew about was Iron Fist, and not just because of the live action TV show, but because he was in the Ultimate Spider-Man animated series. So, like, that was my first introduction to Iron Fist. So, specifically the Danny Rand iteration of the character. So just like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Like I say, he'll probably take up the mantle of being the Iron Fist. But it's like, yeah, you're inspiring so many of the heroes out there, but there's a lot of evil out there in the world that needs to be stopped. And yeah, this to ride off into the sunset. And I was like, oh, I thought that was kind of neat. And, you know, once again, that's the other element to it, because June Fawn could end up being like the Iron Fist in this world. I think that's another reason why the Watcher, like, needed to save him, just because he didn't want to see a child get murked. You see enough death, you got to interfere every once in a while, but especially knowing, like, right, him being around will end up saving and helping Kate and Shang-Chi, but also he'll eventually grow up to become his own hero, saving even more people. So the domino effects of that. But that's the problem when the other Watchers show up being like, yo, like, we are supposed to watch and you've interfered too long and we can't let that go unanswered. And they smash him against, you know, the glass he's watching, and fragments of it break off. Now, I'm assuming that's going to tie into the next episode, why the next episode is what it is. We'll talk about it when we get to it, but I mean, obviously, I'm getting to these episodes a little late, so it's already out there, and plus it was already kind of known, but unless you don't pay attention to stuff like that, you wouldn't know what to expect from this season. And also, I'm wondering if that probably has like a mass effect, either leading into episode 7 and 8, you know, or it's just, I mean, you'd assume, like, maybe it's going to be like, oh, we're going to do a weird thing with episode 7, but because of this whole thing with the Watchers made that happen, and that might tie into episode 8, or it might just be a thing of, no, episode 8 just kind of, it's like I said, usually the episode 7, the second to last episode always leads into the last episode, so I'm curious to see how that plays out structurally, but I'm excited to see where the next episode ends up taking us. With that, if like I said, if it's related, I can only assume it is, but we'll have to wait to see. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.